joining me today as we have a look through the Let's Play Piano book series. I'm Michela and I'm the creator of this series. We have a lessons book and also a theory book that accompanies it with engaging activities for the student to complete at home. Together, the two books beautifully scaffold students' musical development. Let's take a look inside. So we have the two books in the matching set, and you should always use the two books together because the theory book really is designed to support the concepts that are taught in the lessons book. The first thing I like to do with students is to do a spot the difference to see what we can see that's different between the two books. Oh yes, this book has theory on it, whereas this book says piano. So the theory book means writing work, that's the work we're going to do with our pencil. Whereas the piano book, that's our pieces, that's what we're going to play. So let's open up the lessons book. You'll have all the things that you expect to see in a method book: how to sit at the piano, keyboard navigation, using our hands, developing correct technique for our fingers, and then we move on to the score. Now, in my experience, many children have difficulty reading two hands simultaneously, which is what we need to do for piano. Of course, other instruments only read one stave. So this can be a challenge for some students. To help this, I've placed the right hand at the top and the left hand at the bottom, just like standard piano music. And we have blue color coding for the right hand and green color coding for the left hand. The blue is blue for the sky because it's the high notes up high, and then green for the grass where it's the lower notes. So straight away students read both staves. We have the left hand step up, the right hand step up, both hands play together. And that really sets them into the right way of reading a piano score. We're introducing the beat. Students get to do a simple improvisation. And we're still on the black keys for this with the treble clef and bass clef introduced, different note values, and we finish off part one there with a silly song. So beginning part two of the book, we have the music alphabet introduced to students. Most students of course know the alphabet by this stage, but it's a new concept to them that it only goes up to G and then loops over and over, going forwards and backwards. So we introduce the CDE group to help them with keyboard navigation. They get to do some improvisation, and then we have some simple songs just using the CDE group. Following this, we introduce using the fifth finger next. And we've got the FGAB group, some time sign work, 4 beats in a bar, 3 beats in a bar, some more improvisation before we move into using 5 fingers. Can you use 5 fingers? And when we use our thumb, we use it on its side. And that's where the part 2 finishes. So in part 3, we begin to look at the stave or staff, as some teachers call it. We start with a stave story that introduces the true history of the stave, that it used to have 11 lines, the great stave, and middle C was the middle line. Now this is an excellent way to present it to students because we can get the idea that the stave is just a directional picture of the music, stepping up, stepping down, line space, line space, line space. Then we begin with the standard stave and middle C, dangly D hangs just the space under the stave. Moving on, we add more notes so that we have 5 notes with 5 fingers. These are the same 5 notes that they've already played in the previous section of the book. So it's not difficult, they pick it up really quickly. And then we start some bass clef notes. Now of course, one of the challenges for musicians is that we have 2 clefs, and so we need to learn the different positions of all the bass clef notes. This is not a middle C approach. My experience tells me that middle C approach is not liked by many children. Thumbs sharing C, it's awkward, and it also is very difficult because the left hand goes backwards in the alphabet with the crossover between A to G, which is very hard for them to gather. So instead we're focused on a new note, bass C, 1, 2, 3, down to bass C. It's the 3rd space down on the bass stave. Once they know C, it's very simple, it just steps forward, C, D, E, F, G. You may notice that the left hand C has the stem going the incorrect way. That's not a mistake, that is deliberate so that students won't start recognizing C just because it has an up stem. Sometimes they do that, and of course when you have a semi-breve C it doesn't even have a stem, so that's quite annoying. So we've turned them all upside down, and in the next book they are corrected and the stem rules are introduced. So then we move into a 5-finger pattern. We've got C, D, F, G right hand, C, D, F, G left hand, and we move through quite a few pieces using that, introducing skips on the stave, proper time signatures, until we finish off with Stop Copying Me. In part 4, we begin looking at new musical skills, and these are the things that make our music sound more interesting. We've got forte and piano adding dynamics into our music, and we have a few pieces about that before we start looking at C scale. Some students may have already been taught how to play the C major scale by well-meaning family or friends. So it's a good time to actually get onto it as a teacher and teach it to them correctly. I always introduce the left hand first before the right hand. This is because it's actually easier because they step up to their thumb and then cross over. You don't have to prepare after your third finger and then forget and run out of fingers. So we present it in that way before we start looking at staccato playing. Staccatos are short and separated, and it's like a little frog jumping forward to make the note short. Then we've got slurs, also looking at a drop lift legato with a 2-note slur. And there's quite a few pieces in here just to look at all of those different musical skills added together. This is where it starts to sound really, really good. Bit of pedal work at the end there. All students I've ever worked with seem to like pressing the pedals. Some don't like the sound of the sustain pedal, but it's interesting to look at the way that the piano works and how it changes it, gives it a different effect. And the final part of the book is part 5, quavers and black keys. Some method book series delay teaching quavers to students. I've found that they're quite capable of playing them. The only difficulty some students have is with the concept of half a beat. If they're not in year 1 or 2 at school and they haven't had much mathematical experience with what a half is, it can be quite challenging to teach quavers. But I use simple words such as running and walk, and that way they can build the rhythms up, much like doing ta-ti-ti. Running, walk, running, walk. The first rhythm is walk, walk, running, walk, which a lot of children are very familiar with from school because their teacher will do a clapping pattern. So they pick up that rhythm really quickly. We use quavers in a few pieces. We have a look at some triad chords. This comes fairly naturally to most students because they've already been doing the open fifths in their other pieces. Just adding the middle note. A couple of pieces with the chords. And then we look at the flat sign. Students are very excited to add flats into their music. It makes the music sound very cool. So we have no buns today, where we've run out of hot cross buns and it's very sad. Bit of a blues improvisation here, really gets them used to that awkward distance between the 3rd finger and the 4th finger when using E flat and F. And we keep moving through some really interesting pieces, looking at sharps before we finish off with fur release. And of course, any piano player worth their salt can play fur release, and it's a good milestone for students to have a simple version to play of fur release. So to finish off this video, we'll just have a quick look at the theory activity book. This is designed to go with the piano book. And you'll notice at the beginning of each section, we have some checkpoint pieces listed. And that's to tell you as the teacher what activities match with the pieces in the lessons book. If you go too far ahead, you'll find that the concepts in the theory book haven't been addressed yet, and then students can get quite confused. So usually 2 to 4 pages is a good amount to set, but just keep an eye on the checkpoint pieces to make sure that it's lining up properly. So we have some simple activities, matching right hand and left hand, some different finger numbers, drawing some notes. You'll find that there's quite a few pages like this in the book. They're flashcard pages. Tear out this page, then cut up the card so you can practice naming the keyboard notes C, D and E. So you actually tear out the page and cut them up. I like to do it in the piano lesson time because I've found if students go home and accidentally have the wrong answers on the backs of their cards, then of course they learn all the wrong notes, which is not very helpful. So these particular ones can be good to do in the piano lesson. Moving forward, we've got some pathfinders to match up the keyboard notes, making up things. And we've got some activities on the stay, first saying whether line notes or space notes. I keep dropping in pages about keyboard notes. Some students are quite slow to actually correlate the notes on the keyboard with the alphabet. Looking at how to draw the treble clef. I've chosen to draw the treble clef in this way. Some teachers teach it from the center of the clef. However, my teaching experience tells me that if you start with the letter shapes that they already know from school, they get on much better drawing the treble clef. So you can begin at the top or you can begin at the bottom, and it actually follows the letter shapes that they're used to. You start at the top, do a big tall J, then make it like a nice capital D shape, and then curve around like a number 6, but don't touch on the side. So they learn how to do the treble clef. Got some more cards, more about the base C, looking at skips, forte, piano, some just good old note naming there, adding bar lines in. And it's all of those kind of activities, and students really engage well with these activities. Sometimes I'll have students that even complete their theory writing work, but they haven't actually learnt their pieces. They love the book so much. Bit of a maze there, follow the things that have one beat, looking at sharp signs before there's a final revision page. And there's just an alignment guide at the back there with a full list of all the checkpoint pieces so you can make sure that it's lining up. So thank you for watching this video about the Let's Play Piano Book series. I hope you've enjoyed it.